So we are holding on Amud Kuf Zayin, the paragraph beginning B'hinei hemshekh Hanal, and we Baruch Hashem completed more or less the body of the Maimah, the main body of the Maimah, in the sugya that it was talking about, the shit of Midas Harachamim, and we've explained that the shit of Midas Harachamim is the Inyan Yichud Seif Mamale. There should be a gilu of Atam Serin Seif Lamata in all of its pratim. In the bottom should be Meir, the Etzem, Eir Avaya, the Etzem of Eir Aseve, which is Machayim Mahavi Kol Eilamis. And that will be Al Yidei Mamale, and Mamale will enable it to be Meir in all of the details of existence, and all those details of existence will be in a state of Haflah, and not so much in a state of Havdalah, one from the other. Look at our conclusion. For the last part of the Maimah, there's a bit of dealing with the few midrashim that still need to be explained. In your sikusim, Tikhleh risikates, called avashish b'sikusim, chavim mitzvahs chama'oid. Also, we're going back to Rosh Hashanah to explain a few of the things we said about Zayin Tikhleh Masecha. The world was created in the Chav Hei. Why did it say Rosh Hashanah is the Tikhleh Masecha? Questions we asked right at the beginning many months ago, at the beginning of the Maimah Rosh Hashanah. We're going to conclude the hemshekh, and it's going to make clear the Inyan Avodah, how even though the Tachlis Hashleimus, the absolute perfection of the Shit of Midas Harachamim, is going to be La'asid Lavei, but that doesn't mean it's just a waiting game. That we're stuck in a phase now whereby there's a Helen Vehestel Nelikus, and that is the sort of the dominance of Midas Hadin is our reality, and that's how it always has to be. No, even in anticipation for the Shleimus HaGeula and the Shleimus HaGilui that will be La'asid Lavei, there is a mode by which people can engage with the act of Yichud Seif Mamale Afilu Bizman Hazeh, and ultimately that is the achana, the necessary preparation that will bring about the ultimate Shleimus HaBiru and the Shleimus HaGilui that will be La'asid Lavei. Good. V'hinei hemshekh hanal the bechinas told us Hashemayim v'ha'aretz, this revelation that will be as a result of this, the Toldos Shemayim v'aretz, the Yichud of Shemayim v'aretz. What is going to be the Gilui as a result of that? Meaning the Bechina of Yichud Zun. So the Yichud of Shemayim v'aretz is the Pshat, the Yichud of Zon Malchus we described. Shu Inyan HaYichud HaSeivim HaMalachali, which is the Inyan of Yichud HaSeivim, like we explained. Hu Al Yedei Teira Mitzvahs. This Hamshacha, this result, this outcome, this tulda, is going to be through Teira Mitzvahs. Teira Mitzvahs is what's going to finalize, conclude, complete the process of Gilu Eid HaSeiva Val Yidei HaMamale. Like it says in the Medrash Rabbah, Eile told us Hashemayim v'aretz, on this pasuk, Eile told us Hashemayim v'aretz. Not obviously not on this pasuk. The pasuk is Tachim Bereshis, but this is the Medrash Rabbah in Vayakil. He emphasizes the word Eile. Eile b'schus mi nivru, b'schus mi heim aimdim. That in the merit of who are these told the Shemayim v'aretz created, and in the zechus of whom are they maintained? The answer is Eila. Eila is the Toldos Hashemayim v'aretz. Eila creates the Toldos Shemayim v'aretz, and Eila maintains the Toldos Shemayim v'aretz. What's the Eila? B'schus Eila Shmeis B'nei Yisrael, in the merit of Eila Shmeis B'nei Yisrael. These are the B'nei Yisrael. The B'nei Yisrael are the ones that enable the Toldos Shemayim v'aretz to happen, the Yichud Seif Mamale to happen, is by the Neshamas Yisrael. The Eile b'schus mi aimdim, And how is this yichud seiv mamale maintained? B'schus eila, or sort of maintained. Let's say b'schus eila ha'edus v'hachukim ha'mishpatim. It references the pasuk where it says eila edus v'hachukim ha'mishpatim Torah mitzvahs. So the Torah mitzvahs al yidei neshamas Yisrael are what achieves the yichud seiv of mamale, and the yichud of Ein Likim, the yichud Zon Malchus, the Tod Shemayim V'Aretz. Dehine Torah u'mitzvah sharsha mibechinas atzmas ein soif shelamayla misherish u'mokinam shachas hakav. So Torah mitzvahs, their sherish is higher than the sherish of the kav. Sherish hakav we know is na ein soif lifnei atzimtzum hashayich le'elamis. Right? Whereas the Torah nemtzich von atzmas ein soif. So just like we say, Mamala is mushrush, and there is Neat Simpson, which is Shaykh la Gilui, Shaykh la Elames, Rasaybiv is Natmas Mus, Gatsama or even Atmas Amoir. So similarly, Torah mitzvahs are from a similar madriga. Balachena Torah Kamisha Yard Lamata, Hiba Bechinas Atmas Mamish. The Torah, even whilst it is Yard Lamata, remains Atmas. Like it says in the pasuk, and my words which I place in your mouth, even whilst they're in the mouth of a person, who's learning this Torah, is still the dvar just as it is l'mayla. So dvarai asher samti beficha, so it can remain dvarai even though it's samti beficha. Doesn't change, it's not nishtana through the Seder Shalshus. As we know, the Eir, which is Shaykh Elamais, is nishtana. As it's nishtalshul, it's nishtana. In the Madrigas El Yenus, there's more of a Gilui. In the lower, there's less of a Gilui. There's a Helen Behest on it. But the Eir, which is Lamayla Shaykh Elamais, there's no Shinui. It remains the same way. It's Lamayla the same way. It's Lamayla is Lamata. As we spoke about at length, the difference between Seiv and Mamala. So similarly is the inyan of Torah. Torah is similarly not restrained in issues of time and place. Like it says, somebody who engages in the study of the laws of a carbon Eilah is as if they brought a carbon Eilah. Even if it's not the Zman HaKrava, it's Zman HaGolus, but there's no Beis HaMikdash, and it's not B'Mokem HaKrava, it's in Chutz La'aretz, Chutz Yerushalayim, Chutz L'Beis HaMikdash. Afal Pikein, it says, Kol ha'isuk b'teiros Eilah ki'ilu hikriv Eilah, u'mikol makim ki'ilu hikriv Eilah mamish. We treat it as if the person has been makriv and Eilah, because the Torah is L'maylim, is Zman HaMakim. And Neisha Torah b'chinas atzmus, since the Torah nemtzich von atzmus, lochen gam k'moish nimshach lamato, eina b'chinas midul g'buklal. Then even whilst it's nimshach lamato, it doesn't have any limitations of time and place, or of any akbalatu. V'zeu shakosu b'medrash lakol yesh sikusim. That's the meaning where we brought the medrash at the beginning of the Maimah. That everything has its limitations. Shmai ba'aris yesh sikusim. Avol Torah ain't no sikusim, but the Torah doesn't. The Shemayim va'aretz shakidu shabemu b'chinas ha'edim ha'malak olam. Since the Shemayim va'aretz, the heavens and the earth receive their gilui, the gilui achayis in them comes from a malak olamim, so therefore yesh leim sikusim. Shu b'chinas midugvul, because the edim ha'malak olamim is mugvul. Ukanal the edim ha'malak the fishu b'chinas ha'aret levad lachin peil b'yat tzimtzum yesh b'chinas midugvul. This Eira Mamala is only a Ha'ara, therefore the Tzimtzum is able to be pale on it, it should have limitations, and be a Yesh. Avalat Torah ain't no Sikusim, but the Torah does not have Sikusim, does not have these limitations. The Tzimtzum is not able to be Magbil it, and so then even whilst it's Lamata, it doesn't have any limitations. Okay?
Didn't we establish that Torah does have limitations? As in, practically there is non-infinite amount of
I was going to say, Well, yeah, he's going to repeat that and deal with that in a second. In the next paragraph, he'll deal with that question. Chair is squeaking. Just like you said. Now, even though there is indeed seemingly lots of limitations in Torah, every aspect of Torah has its medida v'agbola. Shabbos, Kashrus, everything. I mean, everything has a Shulchan Aruch is for the medidas v'agbolas on the contours and the constraints on each mitzvah. Regarding this, it says it's longer than the measure of the earth. That the measure of the Torah is longer than the earth. That the medida, we're acknowledging it does have a medida. By saying it's longer than the measure of the earth, meaning it does have a midah, it's just its measure is longer, right? All that is telling us is the medida is not like the medida of the ilamis. The Mashakosu Arukum Eretz Mida Eina Kavana Da Mida the Torah Arukum Mida da Aretz Bekamas Levad, and what we're intending to say when it says it's got a greater measure than the earth is not to say that the intention isn't to say that its measure is greater in quantity, in kamus. Just like you'd say that the heavens have a greater, the universe, the solar system has this greater measure than the earth, which is a measure of kamus. So you measure them with the same rules of measurement. But you conclude that the heavens are larger. Because both of them are b'chinas mamala, there's more of a gilu oir in shamayim. Because there in the heavens, the gilu oir mamala is not so mutzumtzum. Ukanal be'inyan, not the yemina, like we said above, regarding not the yemina, using the dafka in the heavens is not the yemina, the right hand, which is more of a gilu oir, and the earth is more the left hand, which is more of a mutzumtzum dika. But it's all within the same context. Heaven and earth are the same category. So it's not just the earth that has limitations, also the heavens have limitations. Because even in the heavens, the gilu is also b'chinas midugvul. Which is not the case when we say by the Torah, when we say that the Torah is longer than the measure of the earth, we don't mean longer in kamus. But it's a qualitative difference. It's not measured in the same way. It's got a longer its measure is longer. It doesn't mean becomes, it means it's in eichus. It's a fundamentally different measure. So we acknowledge that Torah does have a measure. So we've seen all the halachas. It's very measured. But it's not the same measure as heaven and earth. And that's why we can say, regarding the heavens and the earth, yesh lo sikusim. Yesh lahem sikusim. But the Torah ain't lo sikusim. Because she'ein ha'eichas ha'medida, the Torah can be eichas ha'medida da ilamis. The category of measurement that we use by the Torah is completely different to the measurement that we're associating with the heavens and the earth. The fundamental nature of the measurement of the heavens and the earth is the degree to which there's a gilu oir of oir mamali in it. Kanal be'ir, I've explained above. When you're in the madrega el yoyin and seidish tashtus, there's more of a gilu oir mamali. In the lower madrega, there's less of a gilu oir mamali. Because the oir is a ha'ara, it's able to be nis tzamtzim, and lefi erech each and every madrega. And it comes in a constrained way. But the nature of the measurement of the Torah is not that the medida is mailim or master on the Torah, but rather the Torah is niskala through those medidas. It's a hagbola atzmis. It's like what we described previously, that the act of tzimtzum, sorry, not here. We learned this 9 ches, this Parshabas, that the inyan of tzimtzum should not be understood as siluk or halem, but should be seen as the inyan of concentration. That the act of tzimtzum is the concentration of that thing. So when the Torah is coming in all these medidas v'hagbolas, the etzem is miskala in these medidas v'hagbolas. You've got the very essence of Torah, dafke in the medidas v'hagbolas. Ukanal sha'oir atmi d'soive bo b'bechinas haprotim b'chdei sheyagilu b'bechinas pnimius. Just, sorry, I skipped a line. Ukamoshin is spoiler ill, but dibra maskil pokadat ha'aretz be'inyan emtsois ha'isiyish megalim etzem ha'oir ha'bilti mutzumtzum. So if you remember in Pokadato, we described how the oisius of Malchus Atzilus function as a way of being megala the etzem ha'oir, which is not mitzumtzum. Oisius sheba atzmus. That you can have medida v'hagbala, but the medida v'hagbala, or the ischalkus, or whatever you want to call it, is not mailem umaster. Adarabah, it's the main means by which the thing is niskala, and that's exactly what we're talking about here in the Gei Seiva Mamala. Ukanal sha'ira asked me to seiva, babu v'chinas hapratim yitleishe gilu v'chinas pnimius, that the seiva is niskala through these pratim, so it can be pnimius. So your al-mashal of the gilu etzem ha-seichel in the pratim of the sugya, the gilu etzem ha-seichel, the rabbus mashpil, the Talmud Gadol, various different ways we've understood how you can have an inyan atzmi, which is niskala, that idea pratim. And it's not helam b'hasta. Similarly, the Torah is not, there's no tzimtzum and there's no helam of the Torah because it's niskala in the pratim of halachis. V'zeu gam kin inyan amadid the Torah, hainu eich yeh gilu b'chinas atzmus b'ifin sheyeh b'chinas gilu b'pnimius. However, we're going to figure out it's possible that you can have a gilu b'chinas pnimius, gilu b'chinas of atzmus, in a way that's begilu b'pnimius, which is, our whole difficulty, what we've been trying to explain. So he says, however it's going to be, one thing you can be sure, that's the principle. When a person learns Torah, someone learns Torah properly, then their dibur is the zvavai mamish. Because there's no tzimtzum, there's no halem on the Torah. The Torah, which is nimshech and atmas in seif, is nimshech lamata. Same thing. Okay, and it's not just the Torah. U'kumoikein ha-mitzvahs. Hein gilui b'chinas pnimius u'tzeynei mamish. Each mitzvah is a gilui of the very ratzon of the Eibishter. Shemeir begilu mamish b'ha mitzvah. In that mitzvah, there's no tzimtzum. That mitzvah that a person performs is the ratzon of Hashem. U'v'nefesh ha'adam ha'isa mitzvah. And when a person does the mitzvah, the ratzon of Hashem is meir b'nafshi. It's not comparable to the way the Eibishter wants there to be a world. It's only a superficial ratzon of Hashem. He only wants a world in order that there can be Yidden who can never be Mekayim mitzvahs. Because it's only a chitzonis haratzon. It's only a ha'arabul vad. Therefore, it's shaykh for there to be halamis v'esteirim. To the point where Lamato, there's no awareness at all of the Eibishter's desire for creation. When it comes to a mitzvah, that's mamish what the Eibishter wants. Why else is someone shaking a lemon? Wearing wool in various configurations, putting cow's hides on their arm. It's a mitzvah. What else is it? There's no elam behest on the fact that it's the ratzon of Hashem. Finding the fisher sheirish am shachim b'chinas atzmis in seif Because it comes from the etzem, therefore it's not mishtana. Etzem built in mishtana. Okay, so we have both Torah, we have mitzvahs as the means by which Neshamas Yisrael are able to cause the Yichud Seivim Mamale, the Shittat Mitzvah Harach and Mitzvah Adin. Does this sound familiar? It should do.
Saying that mitzvahs come from that side.
Well, I tell you why it should sound familiar. If you go back to the end of Eilatel B'Shamayim, to the Vayim Mashmini Atzeres, on Amid Samach Tes, just look at the Asius, the end of Samach Tes. Just go back.
Yeah. In the Ilam Yochel Eskaim.
And to the previous paragraph? Yeah, no, doing that. Eino Ilam Yochel Eskaim Lam Metobit Misyanis, Akin Shitza Fimid Sarachmim, Shla Yu Alam Misvesterim Kolkach, Kim Yair, Eir Havaya, Al Yedei, Teira, Mitzvahs. Ki al Teira Mitzvahs lo yesh halamis vesterim, ki Eira Teira b'shar sh'lemayla mi'a Eira shaykh la'elamis, shatzimtzim poil by the tamzim as Eir, that's when they get to the Eira shaykh la'elamis, v'ayidei ze bo b'ribu halamis vesterim chuli kanal, masha enkin Eir ha-Teira, einem mitzamtzim al yidei ha-timtzim chuli, kamoi she'yisbo'eh. Kamoi she'yisbo'eh, that's where we're explaining it. Mele in a shaykh b'zeh inyan, Tzimtzumim ve'elamis, ad sha'ateir lamati k'moi lamayla mamash, ulezeis al yidei ha-Teira, nimshach gilo leikus, la'aseh kol ha'elamis v'esteirim chuli kanal, ulezeis gam bizman ha'golus, she'yishibu elamis ve'ekuvim, moyil eisek ha-Teir lahakal alav avidosei, lahasim mimenu amniyas ve'ekuvim. Good.
So we've got like not both shatim, but we've got both two alternative explanations, two different ways of looking at something at the same time for two different things. So we've got there being a real symptom on the ilamis and everything. That's a midas din or whatever. And you've also got the Indian of then Yarab Pneumius because it's from Atzimus Ein Sof Mitzvahs. And even though it looks like it's the same thing as the real symptom, nevertheless it's not the same thing. It's just like Yarab Pneumius, right? We basically got both two alternative with two explanations, or not two explanations, but we'll explain that even though there's a symptom going on in both circumstances, one of them is a symptom, one of them isn't really a symptom.
Well, it's a different notion of symptom.
Right.
They're both one.
Would you even call it symptom?
Well, you can have the same. We can just like we say, the Torah has a midah, just like the Ilamis have a midah, but the midah is different. Be'echos, there's a category difference. They're categorically different. When you say midah b'negeh to Ilamis, you're talking mamash and midah in the normal, in the ordinary sense, where something is mugbal, where something is a helen v'hester, where there's a difference between an elyon and a tachtin, all those types of medidas. But when it comes to an inyan atzmi, when an inyan atzmi is expressed in a ofen modud or mugbal, the medida of agbal is not mailam or master, adarabah, it's megala. Because the act of being modud or mugbal is the etzem itself is magbil itself. So it's ein etzem asel etzem. It's using its own force to reveal itself.
So you can't really call that a symptom. It's not even a different type of symptom, right?
Well, and if you remember in the Ein Ches, we did call it symptom. And he said the emes, the inyan of symptom, the fundamental kavan of symptom, is concentration and not removal or concealment.
Right.
So we can and we will call it symptom, but we'll think about it in a different way because we have this different context. Okay, weiter. Ela sha'ateiru mitzvahs nislabshu bidvarim gashmiyim. Kumoi kol inyani ateiru v'chol halachis kulam heim dvarim gashmiyim. Just like all inyanim of teirim and halachis are what they're immaterial things, ubifrat ha-mitzvahs, and especially the mitzvahs shein bidvarim gashmiyim are predominantly in material things. Tzitzis b'tzema gashmi, tfilim v'kav gashmi. Even the mitzvahs, which are obligations of the heart, are still melubish in an inyan gashmi, and the nefesh atifis agashmi. Everything, when it comes to Torah mitzvahs, is associated with Gashmias. V'hainu, ta'kavana b'maisa mitzvahs hu. What is the whole intention of maisa mitzvahs? Lifala bittul gam b'advam gashmiyim. So there should be a bittul even in the material things too. So they should also be absorbed within kedusha. V'hainu, meaning to say, al yedei ha'adam ha'isas ha'mitzvahs bebechinas bittul ritzayni l'mayla mitiv v'eregeloi. When a person is mekayim mitzvahs in a manner of bittul, of his own ratzon, doesn't do mitzvah because he wants. Dafka does mitzvahs in a manner where he doesn't want to. He goes way and above his nature and his and what is used to, what is comfortable with. The person transforms his heart, his desires, from one extreme to another. Everything that his heart is inclined to do by its nature, lo yaseh, he won't do. Everything that his heart is inclined to not want to do, he will do. So he's mamish, undermining every single inclination he has. So through this act of bittul, also achieves a bittul in the material things that he's engaging with. Because the entire world was given to the heart of a person. So a person is able, his behavior determines the nature of the world. When a person suppresses their desire to not, and therefore not do something, all the negative commandments, the 365 negative commandments, included within that also all of the prohibitions of the Rabbanon. And add on to that all of the things that are mutter but are not necessary. By restraining himself and not doing that thing, be it in a Issa Deiraisa, be it in Issa Derabonim, even being a Siag Derabonim, or even being done a Dava Hamutta, but it's not Muchlachlai, then that thing that he's restrained himself from becomes elevated. That physical thing that he refrained from becomes elevated. And it works the other way too. When a person does something they're supposed to do, but in a manner of bittul harotzin, so going way and above and beyond their normal level of commitment. We're talking here about the mitzvahs maisias, which are enclosed in the physical world. And he does them beyond his norm and his nature. Both in the actual performance, because he's inclined not to bother doing this thing at all. Nevertheless, he still does it. But not just doing it, he does it with a hiddur. You elevate that thing. So also have bittul to elikus, transforming the world around you through this through your mitzvahs. V'nimtza. So therefore, we can conclude from this that that besides for the fact that the person is bringing his own self into a state of bittul, he also achieves a bittul in the material world. And through this behavior, bittul hayesh, what it causes is there should be a gilui of the bittul ha'elyin. What's the bittul ha'elyin? Yichud avayin alikim. The types of the bittul ha'elyin is the yichud of avayin alikim. The hainu the bechin is yesh ha'elyin ad reish kol dagin shu bechin es mamala bichlal. As we've explained, that the oir hakav, even in the madregas elyonis, is considered bechinas yesh, the gabi the einisesh lifnei atzimtzum. So the entirety of eir mamala, which is the yesh ha'elyin, we cause a bittul in the yesh ha'elyin. The bittul in the yesh ha'elyin, such that it is no longer mailim or master on the eira soiviv, or in this case the elikim is not mailim or master on avaya, but rather becomes the means by which avaya is niskala. Yeah, bottle the nichel bechinas soiviv, a bittul hu shalayalim v'yasichul ikanal. What does it mean? It's bottle means it's no longer mailim or master. Yichud b'chinas soiv mamalish, yagilu b'chinas soiv mamish b'hamamalish. So, dafka al yidei a person's kfir, that person's bittul hayesh, and it's not just because it's the mitzvah, it's because it's the person doing it. This is a key thing. So I'm going to take you back to, I think it's Ahmed Yud Zayin. No. It's in Rosh Hashanah. No, it's after Yud Zayin. It's Chaf Aleph. My notes are has it Reila Kamal Lechol Tikhleh. Yeah. So you look in Chaf Aleph, Maim Yechienu Miyamayim. What did it say? We brought the mile of Torah. We were there talking about the Inyan of Mashpia Makabel. We talked about Torah being the Mashpia and Neshama Yisrael being the Makabel. And we revealed that the Sheirush Neshama Yisrael is even higher than the Torah. Here where the emphasis is on the Torah mitzvahs. But we've already done all the work. Let's not forget what we've said about Neshama Yisrael. And he brought from the Medrash, Eila Shmeis B'nai Yisrael, and Eila Eidos V'Achukim V'Mishpatim. There has to be Neshama Yisrael. We said that when it blow the shofar, they have to have Suki Tanach. It's about the fifth line down. The Yiraisa v'Kutra Bricha Kol Echad, Shegam Begilu B'chinas Chad. Yishleima the Chol Eiru Davuk Miyuchad Mekeira Bifrat Be'ira Teira and Neshama Yisrael and Kamosh Labden Yisa Atzmas Abi Kamokum Hari Us B'fnei Atzmi. So in Mesad Zeh Tzarich Lias Psuki Teir Davka B'chlei L'hamshekh Hayidei Zeh so Davka Yisrael Oimrim HaPsukim. Shem Yezel Commission is Spoil Ilbin Iva Chayu Iva Gamui Shechtel Eiru Kechis Havus Walidei Eiru B'chinas Hamshachas Mat Kofis Havus B'chinas Malchus K'meikenu B'teir Neshama Yisrael the Chol B'chulas Yisrael Tzarich Lias Alidei HaTeira. We need, in order to achieve anything, we need the Torah mitzvahs. Avo gufa pula, while the Neshama Yisrael. So it's important in the context of the mile of Torah here. It's the mile of Torah al yidei Neshama Yisrael. V'zehu top of kuftes. V'zehu b'yei masei savai elikim. And this is what it means in the pasuk when he says on the day the avai elikim made. Asois u'bechinas mitzvahs ma'asis. Lashon asois, made, is associated to the in the mitzvahs ma'asis. To the yoish ha mitzvahs yisidosum ba'ari keiz bechinas atzma sein soif. Whilst the mitzvahs, their origin is in atzma sein soif, the yordu lamata, and they come down lamata and dvarim gashmiyim, and they come enclosed in the physical world. Lezois mitzad ma'alosam, so bechinas habitul sheb asiyosan, the yosim luboshim begashmiyas. Havaydu b'hem b'chinas bitl hayesh chuli kanal ayidei zen nase b'chinas habitl l'mayla l'yoyis yichud ha'maylekim yichud seifim m'male. So you have the mitzvahs which the sheirish is gohich atzma zayin seif the one when the mislabish in olam hazeh and in the shamas Yisrael and mekayim the mitzvahs b'chinas bitl, they're able through that to be mayla the varim gashmiyim, so they should also have bitl. And through that, they're able to be poyal that the maila, there should be a bittul of the yesha elyon of Aveir Mamala Bechlal. There should be gilu and a yichud of Seivim Mamala in all Veilamis. The impact of mitzvahs maisius. That's where it all comes down to in the end. Because if you remember, in Shuv Yisrael, right at the beginning of Shuv Yisrael, what does he say? And Amid Chafhei. He says, the whole mashal, Zayning and Chamin, in the Medrash that we brought at the beginning of Yom Rosh Hashanah, to understand shit of Midas Arachamim. He writes in the second paragraph, last word on the second line down, Omnam klolos inyan ha-mashal hazehu, lahoyros ala anhagam milamayla, eich sheyeh seide v'oifen ha'avodah the neshama Yisrael lamata. The whole sort of arichas and haskalah of the inyan of Sovev, Mamala, Kab, Yichud Elo, Yichud Tator, everything we've done in the hemshekh, and ultimately why the Medrash itself said what it said, why the Medrash says what it says, why we're explaining the Medrash is what to give a seder in Anhagas Avedis Ha'adam. And the Seder and Hogas Avedis HaAdam is a koch and a Ibegegebenkeit to kiyim mitzvahs maisius behidu, especially in a manner of kfir, of bitl hayesh. That through that bitl hayesh, you're able to be poil a bitl hayesh in the whole olam, and even in the yesha el yonim malak olamim. So should be gilu of atmospheric and safe lamata. All of the hagbolis and the medidus and hagbolis of olam are no longer medidus v'hagbolis in a manner which are mailam u'master and elikus, but the medidus v'hagbolis that are megal elikus. The atmosphere in safe is niskala al yodam, because they're completely bottom. And that we explained in the moshel of the gilu etzem aseichel in the sugya, or in the moshel of the Rav who's mashpia to a Talmud Gadol. Those are our two mashal that we've had. Yeah. Now again, we've got some tidying up of all of our different midrashim. What does the Medrash Rabbah say? Now we can understand the Medrash Rabbah when it says Eile Toldes. These have Toldes. When it's B'yom Asay Savay Elikim, then Eile Toldes Shashmayim Ba'aretz B'yom Asay Savay Elikim. When is it Eile Toldes Shashmayim Ba'aretz? When there's a shit of Mitzvah Rachamim. When there's a Yichud Sefer Memala. Al Aval Rishonim. But the original Bereshis Bar Elikim, there was no Toldes. When the world was just Mitzvah Adin, there was no Toldes. The Rishonim, from the Rishonim, from a world that was created from Midas Hadin, Him Toyu Vavoyu, there's Cheshach and Klippis, like we said in the Maimah Eile Tel Shemaim Ba'aretz. Shenivru b'Midas Hadin, Shul B'chinas HaTimtzum v'Hed Agilu. When there's the Timtzum v'Hed Agilu, it allows for the opportunity for there to be Metzias Hara. Shem Mizen is Havu HaKlippis Shem B'Tachis HaYeshu B'chinas Hed Abitul L'Gamri. So this is what we said in the Maimah Eile Tel Shemaim Ba'aretz, Maimah 6. Al Eilu Heim told this, but these ones do have told this. The Pirush told this, Uloshen Leida V'Skalis. When we say told this, offspring, that's what we mean. Birth and revelation. Shubechinas Gilui. So the Gam Yesh Leimar, the told this Koy Al Maisa Mitzvahs. It's not just we're talking here about Gilu Elikus, but when there's Yichud Seivim Amala, or rather, then there's this is like sort of the outcome. When there's a shit of Midas Arachamim, then there's a Gilui, and things up the Helam, and therefore there's no clippers and Sitra Achra. Not only that, but Gam Yishleima, the told this Koyal Maisa Mitzvahs. The Eile told us Shemayim Ba'aretz that the told this is a reference to the mitzvahs. K'mayim and my pre-mitzvah. Just like it says, what are fruits mitzvahs? Eine Scheide am Mitzvahs beginnt bittel arotzim, va Mitzvahs nit nur bei Eilem Artikeln darf gefisch werden beginnt a bittel. Deze mamshich beginnt sich zu mal. So you can look at two ways. Eile told us Shemayim Ba'aretz you must say Savay Elikim. The when there's a yichud of Seva Mamala, then there's a Gilu Elikus involved. That's the told days. Or you could look at it another way and say, Eila told this. That when there's told days, when there's Maisa HaMitzvahs, then you have a Yichud Seif Mamala. Sheyoy Bechilu Bechinas Ein Seif Mamish Lamata Mata Begilu Bipnimis Chulikana. Just two different types how to understand it. Okay, now we have to finish off this mimer. Bezehu shekosu le-Khol Tikhleh Reisi Kates Pirush le-Khol Tikhleh v'Chemda. So we brought the beginning of the mimer. What do we mean when we say Tikhleh? We mean Tikhleh v'Chemda. Shebechinas ha'oinig. In all types of tanugim, Reisi Kates. The Chol bechinas tainug sheba'olamais. That whatever level of tainug you have, as long as it's in the olamais, Gam tainug and neshama gan Eden. We're talking not just in tainug and gashmiim, but also in tainugim and the neshamas, tainugim ruchniim. Hakol bechinas mamala. Since it's all from bechinas mamala, sheyesh ledem midagmul, so it's going to be mugbal, just like we said before. Shemayim ba'aretz yesh lem sekusim, right? Avo rechava mitzvahs chomeid. But when it comes to ma'isa mitzvahs, it's bligvul. Rechava. Shatainug sheba mitzvahs hu bligvul. Tanugim. In Oilamais Tanugim, which nimmt sich from Mamala Kol Almim, are always going to be Mugbal. But Tanugim was nimmt sich from Atmospheric and Seif. Like the mitzvahs, they're going to be blieben. Even though the main performance of mitzvahs ultimately is not about tainug and pleasure, is about bittul. But when a person performs the mitzvahs in a manner of bittul arotzin, he calls it there should be a gilui of the Eibish's tainug. The nachas ruach lefonai shamarti v'nasir tzoni. Through bittul, nasir tzoni, there's a nachas ruach. Shaidesh nasir tzoni b'mais ha-mitzvah shu b'chinas bittul arotzin. Aidesh mamshichim b'chinas yichud tzeiv m'malin. And that is a nachas ruach. That is a gilu tainug, because tainug is in asmi in pnimi, just like the gilu aseiv. Yeah. And this is what it means when it says on that day when Havai Elikim made the heavens and the earth. Ukanal shamitzvos shisuidosam mahari kedr b'chinas ein seif b'yardu lamatim islav dvam gashmim sha'avodu b'hem b'chinas bittul harotzin ayidezen nasa yichud Havai Elikim shu yichud aseiv mamala. Through the asois, through the doing the Torah mitzvahs, you have Havaya and Elikim kol echad. You have the Yichud Havaya and Elikim and the Yichud Seif Mamala. Umeir ba'odom gamkim b'chinas hataynu ga'atzmi. It's not just you have a gilui. The person is just an oived and does his avodah b'bittul, and he causes there to be a gilu tainug elyon. This tainug elyon is not just a tainug that passes by him. Rather, it's also meir in the person who experiences the tainug of Eliki. The person has a geschmack and a pleasure in doing the mitzvah. It's not why he's doing it. He's doing the mitzvah because of bittul. But by doing the mitzvah in a ma'ifan of bittul, he's megala in himself a tainug. He has a geschmack in Kabbalah self. Elashat tainug shaloi hu mashiyish nachas ruach l'maylo b'asiyas ha-mitzvahs. Why is he so happy about? What is he enjoying about doing this mitzvah bittul harotzin? What is the pleasure? He's having pleasure that is a pleasure by the Eibishter. He knows it's causing the Eibishter pleasure. Yismach Yisrael ba'Eisav, Peirush Shekol Mishu Mizer Yisrael Yish Leismeach B'Simchas Hashem, Asher Sos V'Sameach B'Diros B'Tachtoinim. Das is the pshat. Nimtza, so we can conclude from this. Sha'ataynu ga'as midain seif, zeu ataynu kshulim. The Eibishter's geschmack is his geschmack. In his Avedis Hashem, K'mish Kosim Mizer Mokamachin. Taif. And this is what we mean when we say that the mitzvahs, your mitzvahs, are extremely expansive, broad. For a person doing the mitzvahs maisius in a manner of bittul. It brings about this extraordinary tainug of the Eibishter, both in the person and in the world around him. Primarily, this gilui of the tainug elyon is going to be losid lovin. This is everything we've been saying in the whole Tikhleh. It's a description of ultimately the way it will be losid lovin. We're primarily everything we're describing here is a description of the osid. But there can be a degree of this now. The obvious we're able to experience this. So it's a grace of madrig. Most people don't have this madrig. Tzadikim. From all that we've said above regarding the shit of Midas Harachim, Midas Adin, Yuvan Masha Kosuv, Ze'ayim Techilas Masecha. We can now understand the question we asked right at the beginning of Yom Tov Rosh Hashanah. Not the very beginning of Yom Tov Rosh Hashanah. Yom Tov Rosh Hashanah, we asked all the questions about blowing the shofar on Shabbos, which we're not going to answer. Because I think, as I remember explaining to you then, really, this hemshekh was based on a long maim of the Tzemach Tzedek. And the long maim of the Tzemach Tzedek really began on the inyan of Ze'ayim Techilas Masecha. The whole Yom Tov Rosh Hashanah was added by the Rebbe Rashab, because in association with the fact that in Ranat, Rosh Hashanah was on Shabbos. So even though that was added at the beginning, it wasn't so much the thing. And by the time he got to the end, he decided not to conclude with that. But so I said, like, there's two Dibra Maschos, there's two Hascholas to the Maimah. And there was the Haschol of the Maimah on Omid, probably Gimel, base. There's Lahavin there, so Lahavin Tikhleh in Rosh Hashanah, Yedod, the Rosh Hashanah involved Maisa Bereshit, V'chafei El Never Eilam. That's really the beginning of the Tzemach Tzedek's Maimah. So now we're going to go back to the questions that we asked on Omid base, which in the time Ranat was 7 weeks beforehand, roughly. A lifetime ago. So Yuva Mashakosa Zayin Tikhleh Masecha. The Rosh Hashanah Nikra Tikhleh Masecha. Rosh Hashanah is referred to as the beginning of your work. How can it be the beginning of your work? Surely the world was created 6 days earlier on the 25th of Elul. And Rosh Hashanah is already the 6th day of the creation, not the beginning of the creation. So the explanation is when we say the world was created, we mean Bereshis Bar Elikim, Bechinas Midas Hadin, where there was Toyu, V'cheshech, and there was no Toldes, etc. Which wasn't the primary purpose. The whole kavanah was there should be a shit of Midas Rachim Zadin, the Niksiv Asher Bar Elikim Lasis. That Hashem made everything in order to do. The Isa Medrash Rabbah, the whole Mashne V'rish Meiri Sarich Tikkun. What do you mean to do? To fix. The Medrash Rabbah says, I know, Kimeis Avus, the Shem Alikim, because the problem with creating everything in B'das Hadim with the Shem Alikim is Beribu Ishtalshlus Nasim is Eis Havus Toyu V'voyu. Heina Klippes Vasitrach Shein Hafchim Umanagdim Ladikus B'tachlis Chuli. That the outcome of creating everything with B'das Hadim is as a Ribu Ishtalshlus, which allows is Neisin Mokim the Managit. So the Klippes, that's what it says. Bereshit Bar Elikim, and Ha'aretz Ha'isa Toyu V'voyu. Toyu V'voyu V'cheshech. Gimel Klippes that means. Yeah. Kiyadua from the beer in Eilit Shemaim Ba'aretz, the 6th Maim. Ba'atikun. So how do you do? What is that? Shebar Elikim Lasis. Create everything that's created by Elikim needs to be fixed. How's it fixed? Ba'atikun Yidei Shit of Midas Arachim and Midas Adin, by mixing the Midas Arachim and Midas Adin. Sha'idei Zeb Pasal Toyu V'voyu, and that's how you're able to eliminate and make void the Inya Toyu V'voyu Cheshech. That's why it says Ve'ela. Commission is by the El Be'erech to begin as Midas Harachmim, begin as Gilu Eirin Seif. That what is Midas Harachmim is the Gilu of atmosphere in Seif. Ayidei Zenim Tokim Agvuris the Shem Elikim. And through this, all of the various dinim and gvuris that come from Shem Elikim become sweetened, become ameliorated. But also, Shem Elikim Davka Nimshach Bechinas Hagilu Eid the Midas Harachim is Hagilu Eid B'Pnimis. And then you have the best of both worlds. You have the Shem Elikim enabling the Gilu of Midas Harachim that it should become B'Pnimis. And it should be a manner where everything is both me and your people are sort of are separated, are elevated, are distinguished. Because like we explained again, that we brought this from the Maharal in Eilat Shemaim Ba'aretz. We brought from the Maharal is Inyan that by the Yidden they're be'etzem toiv, and therefore the removal of, here we go on Amid Ein Hey, the Yidden are the Mokim Haroy Legilu Eir. He was explaining, because any aspect of Ra is not really shaykh to them. It's a davar noisaf on them. It's not their real personality. That's the shorthand of what we were saying on Amud Ayin Hay, how the objective is to remove the Toyu Avay V'Cheshech, but Yidden want it to be removed, because Yidden, regardless of how they behaved, the Yidden, the identity is fundamentally Toiv, and therefore they become a Kli Haroyu L'Gil Elikus. There will be L'Asid Labi. Can you wait a second? Shochas Bechinas Shidduch Midas Harachim Midas Adin Mamshichim Neshamas Yisrael Ayidei Aveda the Teira Mitzvahs. So that's the fundamental line of it all. How do you pull this off? How do you make this plausible? How do you make it possible? There should be the shit of Midas Harachim Midas Adin. This is through the Aveda of Neshamas Yisrael be Mekayim Teira Mitzvahs. The Zel should be as Adam Davke Ksiv Beis Hashem is the Bailikim. That's in order the creation, the combining of the two names of Hashem, of Havai and Elikim, Midas Adim is Arachamim, is specifically by Brias Adam. Kumishkos it's Havai Elikim as Adam. By even Havai Elikim as Atzela. And in the he also wrote in the note, which he then said not to include, but we have it here, Vayit Havai Elikim Gam Be'edin, which is all about the Avodah, or what the Neshamas have to do. So Niska Akel Shem Moli. In all these cases, it mentions both the name of Havai and Elikim. Even though also by the animals it says this too. But that comes dafka after the Brias Adam. So it also mentions it by the animals. Why? Because the person is able to also bring in the inyan of Havai Elikim into the animals.
To the whole world, right?
Yeah. And furthermore, Rashi explains that when it says Yitzira, the forming by the animals, the taich doesn't mean they were formed. It means that they were ruled. That they were this, so that if that's the taich, then Havai Elikim is also appropriate, because it's the way that is the inyan of how the Dvarim Gashmiyim are under the control and the dominion of Neshamas Yisrael. And so this is what it means when we say that the day of creation of Adam HaRishon was the beginning of your work. Because it was on that day when Adam was created, is nimshech b'yom asayis Havai Elikim. Because that was the true beginning of the work, because that was when there was the shittuf of Havai and Elikim, shittuf Midas Harachim Midas Adin, shu inyan yichud Havai ve'Elikim, b'chinas yichud seiv v'mamale chuli. Chaim. And that is the siyam hemshekh of Ranat, which Baruch Hashem, not all hemshechim have a full conclusion. They don't always get ended. So we're fortunate that hemshekh like this have a full. And you get in the last two pages a summary of lots of inyanim, as I tried to point out in the early Maimorim, how it's all coming together to make the final, ultimate point that the reason we learn Chassidus is in order to give us a chayas in our Avedas Hashem of Limud HaTorah and Kiyum HaMitzvahs Behiddah. And the hisponenus that comes with the hemshekh Ranat is to deher that in order to achieve the shit of Midas Harachim and Midas Adin that it was talking about in the Medrash, and to achieve the Yichud Havai and Elikim, and the Yichud Seivim Mamale, and the Yichud Zon Malchus that we've elaborated upon in the hemshekh, it all depends on the Neshamas Yisrael, and it all depends on the Avodah of Bittul Hayesh, of Ibgegebenkeit to Torah Mitzvahs, and then it can be Poyel, like Gilu Eira Seiviv, Gilu Atzmus Ein Seif, Al Yidei Mamale, and can understand what that means. And then ultimately, in its shleimus, Begeula HaMitzvah Shleima, Al Yidei Mashiach Tzidkeinu, take of Miyad Mamish.